The film begins by introducing a female doctor named Dr. Kessie Aaron, who has just woken up from her sleep. That day, she is running late for an important experiment at the Collingwood Institute, a research facility focused on medicine and technology, where various experiments are being developed.
And yet it plays a key role in blink. When your eyes close.
The Collingwood Institute is led by Dr. Peter Conrad. At the Institute, Kessie and her team, composed of young scientists and medical students, are working on developing and testing a theory. Is there a hidden reality that appears when humans blink? Scientifically, humans blink 15 to 20 times per minute. The purpose is to keep the eyes moist and clean. In the fraction of a second that the eyes are closed, the brain automatically fills in the missing visual input. But what if something appears during that blink, unnoticed by the conscious mind? This is the foundation of their major experiment. By creating a serum called X38, the Collingwood team attempts to stimulate the brain's perception to see beyond the ordinary reality. The serum is injected into several volunteer test subjects, including Frank Stephen, Leon Baker, Chris Pezza, and a few others whose names are not specified in detail. Each subject is equipped with a neurological monitoring device on their head to record brain activity throughout the experiment. After receiving the X38 serum injection, the subjects began to show changes. At first, they only experienced visual disturbances such as flashes of light, strange figures, dark shadows, and unexplained sounds. However, within just a few hours, their condition worsened. They lost their appetite, stopped responding to conversations, and barely moved. Most of the time, they just lay or sat with empty stares. The nurses at the facility stepped in to help by moving the subjects using wheelchairs, just to take them out of their rooms so they wouldn't remain confined indoors all the time. Amid the worsening state of the other subjects, only one began to show any form of response: Frank Stephen. While the rest remained silent and withdrawn, Frank slowly started to react to his surroundings. But instead of speaking or moving normally, he began to obsessively scribble on sheets of paper, random lines, symbols, and distorted shapes that no one could interpret. His strange behavior drew the attention of Dr. Kessie during one of her routine visits. She stood beside him watching as he scribbled with a blank stare, his hand moving as if on autopilot. A deep sadness washed over her, not only because of what she was witnessing, but because Frank was not just another test subject. He was her partner, both in science and in life. They had worked together at the Collingwood Institute for years, and both played key roles in developing the X38 serum. But just a few weeks before the experiment officially began, something went terribly wrong. Frank was found unconscious in the lab late at night, with signs of the serum having been injected into his arm. There were no surveillance recordings, no witnesses, only speculation. Since that night, Frank had never spoken a word. His condition declined rapidly, mentally and physically. Some believed he had injected himself either out of desperation or curiosity, but no one truly knew the reason, not even Kessie. All she could do now was watch as the man she once loved slipped further away, trapped inside a mind altered by the very experiment they had created. Although Frank showed some level of response through his scribbles, his overall condition remained unstable. Whenever someone tried to communicate with him or asked a question, he stayed completely silent and unresponsive. In fact, the opposite began to happen. His body started convulsing, as if something was violently disturbing his nervous system from within. Seeing this, the two students assigned to monitor Frank, Edward and Stacy, immediately panicked. They had been tasked by Dr. Kessie to observe and record Frank's progress regularly, but they never expected to face such a critical situation. Just then, Trista, another student involved in the project, entered the room and quickly decided to end the session. She was deeply concerned that if Frank's condition continued to deteriorate, it could turn into a much larger problem for everyone involved, especially knowing how close he had once been to Dr. Kessie. It was safer, Trista thought, to return Frank to his room and wait for further instructions from Dr. Kessie. After helping Frank back to his bed, the group began to clean up the mess left behind. As Stacy picked up several sheets of paper scattered on the floor, pages that Frank had used for his frantic scribbling, her eyes caught on a particular drawing. It was different from the rest. Amid the chaotic lines and symbols, there was one distinct image, a mysterious figure. Meanwhile, in her office, Dr. Kessie sat quietly, reviewing stacks of experiment reports. The atmosphere was calm until a knock came at the door. To her surprise, it was Paolo, her adoptive younger brother, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. He had come simply to visit and reconnect, after months of being apart with no contact between them.
Is that the helmet you were talking about?
It sure is.
Let's do this.
As night fell, the usually busy Collingwood Institute began to grow quiet. The halls emptied, lights dimmed, and the facility slipped into an eerie stillness. One of the nurses, having just finished her shift, walked alone to the parking lot, ready to head home. But just moments after getting into her car, she was attacked by a strange, unidentified creature that appeared out of nowhere. At that exact moment, back in the observation room, Frank began seizing again. Edward, who was on duty that night and monitoring Frank's brain activity, noticed a massive spike on the neural scanner. Panic-stricken, he tried calling Dr. Kessie, but she didn't answer. She had already fallen into a deep sleep. It wasn't until just before dawn that Kessie woke up to the news. One of the nurses had been found dead. However, when the investigation team arrived at the scene, they encountered something completely inexplicable. The nurse's body had vanished without a trace. Inside the car, the only thing left behind was a smear of blood, fresh, undeniable, and chilling. Kessie rushed to the observation room and demanded an explanation from Edward. He explained that he had tried calling her the night before to report a sudden, intense spike in Frank's brain activity. The data showed levels far beyond what the human brain should be able to handle. Levels that, under normal circumstances, would cause immediate death. But somehow, Frank survived, showing no signs of brain damage. Still shaken, they decided to review the surveillance footage from the moment of Frank's seizure. As the video played, they noticed something alarming. A dark, shadowy figure briefly appeared near Frank. It moved unnaturally, its form flickering as if it existed only halfway in their reality. Kessie and Edward exchanged uneasy looks. They both understood the implications. That figure wasn't human, and most likely, not from this world. They came to a disturbing conclusion. Frank's body had become a link between dimensions. Each time he suffered a seizure, it opened a rift, however briefly, between the human world and a darker, unknown realm. Through that opening, something malevolent could pass through. It now seemed certain that the shadowy entity was responsible for the nurse's death, and it explained why her body had vanished without a trace, only a smear of blood left behind. Sensing that something was being hidden from her, Kessie decided to confront the one person most responsible for the project, Dr. Peter Conrad. She wanted to know just how deeply he was involved in the development of the X38 serum. However, instead of approaching him directly, Kessie called Peter and asked to meet him outside the building under the pretense of discussing their research.
Yes, Kessie, what do you need?
Can you meet me in the break room right now? It's urgent.
Once Peter left his office, Kessie quietly slipped inside. To her surprise, Peter's computer monitor was still on, showing an ongoing data deletion process. Important files related to the test subjects, including Frank, were being permanently erased from the system. There was no way to recover them. Kessie's suspicion deepened. Someone was clearly trying to cover something up. She began searching the room for anything that might have been overlooked. In one of the file drawers, she found several old videotapes labeled with Frank's name. She immediately played the first one. To her shock, the footage showed Frank practicing a short speech. He was rehearsing how to propose to Kessie. The next recording showed CCTV footage from inside the lab. Frank appeared to be running tests on the X38 serum, carefully analyzing its chemical structure. In the video, Frank told Dr. Peter that he wasn't ready to proceed with human trials, as the full range of side effects was still unknown. He urged Peter to delay the research until they fully understood the risks. But then came the most disturbing part. While Frank's back was turned, Peter quietly picked up a syringe containing the X38 serum. Without saying a word, and without Frank's knowledge, he injected it directly into Frank's arm. The reason behind Peter's actions finally became clear. Dr. Peter had been driven by ambition and financial pressure. Their project required massive operational funding, and the investors had made it clear: no progress, no money. In order to keep the funding alive, Peter made a ruthless decision. He sacrificed Frank as the first human subject. For him, time was money, and to secure continued financial support, he was willing to betray one of his own colleagues. To cover up what he had done, Peter deleted all surveillance footage related to the incident, ensuring that no evidence could link him to the injection. As the truth came to light, Peter walked into his office, only to find Kessie there, watching the footage. He froze. Kessie turned to him, overwhelmed with disappointment and fury. She confronted him, voicing her anger and heartbreak over the betrayal. She told Peter she could no longer be part of the project, and that she intended to resign from the Collingwood Institute. Meanwhile, in another room, Edward was relaxing, casually playing a game on his tablet. But suddenly, without warning, he was attacked by an invisible force. The assault was violent, leaving him with severe injuries and massive bleeding. He died instantly. Trista, who witnessed Edward's horrific death, was in complete shock, panicked and trembling. She ran to the restroom to calm herself. But before she could collect her thoughts, the entity found her too. She would be its next victim. The string of deaths was not random. It was directly linked to Frank's condition. At that very moment, he was once again experiencing violent seizures. Each time it happened, the gateway between the human world and the supernatural realm briefly opened. Unaware of this, Doctor, Peter approached Frank with another syringe of the X38 serum, intending to strengthen the neural link for future experimentation. But he didn't realize that the invisible entity was already in the room, connected directly through Frank's body. Within seconds, Peter was killed, just like Edward and Trista before him. But the chaos didn't stop there. Stacy, who had stepped away to rest, was also attacked. The entity no longer targeted just researchers or students. It began hunting everyone inside the Collingwood Institute. One by one, people across the facility fell victim to the force that now roamed freely, slipping through the cracks between worlds. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Kessie and Paolo realized they couldn't simply run. If they fled, the deaths would continue, and no one would be left to stop it. The only way to end it all was to save Frank's soul, still trapped in the other realm. That was the reason for his vacant stare, his disconnection from reality, his silence. All along, Frank's seizures hadn't been random neurological episodes. They were signals, cries for help. His soul was fighting to return, but it couldn't cross back on its own. To reach the gateway between the two worlds, they would need to use the X38 serum stored in the restricted supply room. It was the only way to bridge the divide and bring Frank back. Realizing time was running out, and more lives would be lost, Kessie and Paolo raced toward the storage room, hoping it wasn't already too late. Once inside the storage room, Kessie injected herself with the X38 serum, fully aware of the risks. Her goal was clear: enter the spirit realm and bring Frank back. Paolo remained behind to protect her physical body, knowing she'd be completely vulnerable during the process. As the serum took hold, Kessie awoke in a cold, warped world filled with shifting shadows and a haunting stillness. Time felt fragmented. Strange, formless figures drifted in the distance, and some tried to block her path. The fear was real, but she pushed on, driven by the memory of who Frank was. After a long, tense search, she finally found him. Frank was seated against a wall in a narrow corridor, his body bound by black, pulsing restraints, and his eyes covered. It was clear the entities in this realm had captured and blinded him, keeping him trapped to use his body as a bridge to the human world. He sensed Kessie's presence and tried to warn her away, convinced that ending his life was the only way to stop the chaos. But Kessie refused. She had come not to give up, but to fight for him. No matter how far he had fallen, she wasn't going to leave him behind. Before they could escape, the creature appeared, furious, sensing their attempt to sever the connection between worlds. Kessie tried to fight it, striking with everything she had, but her efforts were useless. The entity was too strong. In seconds, she was overpowered, left bloodied and helpless. Seeing Kessie wounded and in danger, Frank realized he had no other choice. With trembling hands, he grabbed a shard of glass and drove it into his own chest. The moment he did, the creature recoiled in pain, visibly affected by Frank's sacrifice. As Frank's life faded, so did the entity's grip on him. Devastated, Kessie screamed and attacked the creature in a fit of rage, stabbing it again and again with a jagged weapon, desperate to avenge Frank's death and all the lives it had taken. Suddenly, everything went black. Kessie awoke in her bed at home, disoriented but alive. She got ready and headed to work, but what she saw left her stunned. Everyone was there. Her colleagues, her friends, even Frank, alive and well, smiling as if nothing had ever happened. At first, she was overwhelmed with relief, but something didn't feel right. Then it hit her. She hadn't returned to the real world. The realm she was in was a construct, a prison crafted by the entity. It had spared her, not out of mercy, but because it needed a new bridge between worlds. Frank was gone, and now it was her turn. The story ends.